Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Is Newark in the house? Hey! So I'm a little bit biased because I took a couple summer classes at Rutgers, Newark when I was an undergrad, so I love it here. So everyone, good afternoon. My name is Diana Gonzales. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Higher Education. And today is the last of our forums, and we are incredibly excited to host it right here in Newark, the biggest city in New Jersey. This has been a series of various forums on various topics, and today's is on student success. This has been a part of a larger state plan that our office, the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education, and it's OSHE for short, so we call it OSHE, and we are crafting the state plan to give vision for what the state really needs. What are the needs of students? What are the needs of parents? What are administrators struggling on the campuses, faculty? We want to hear from you. And this is a way to get your feedback and hear what your issues are, complaints, but also questions. Give you the opportunity to ask, certain things that you feel kind of disconnected from the state. We are not this ominous agency that you can't ask and ask questions to. So we invite you to please submit your questions. Did everyone get a question card that was on your chair? Awesome. We encourage you to fill that out, and our staff is around the room. Staff, can you please raise your hands? All OSHE staff. They're around the room, and they're wearing badges with a a blue ribbon that says staff. Jot down those questions as you start to hear the discussion. We invite you to write those down, as well as on the wall here to the right or your left, you're going to see what is your one wish for students at New Jersey higher education institutions. We want to know if there's one thing that you would want to change or wish or suggestion. We want to hear it, no matter what it is. That's on a Post-it note on the back of your question card. Feel free to jot that wish down, post it, and we're going to use a lot of this feedback to inform a lot of our plan and our holistic vision for the state. So today's event will include some remarks from special guests, very special guests, followed by a presentation from the state's Higher Education Secretary, Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis. An engaging discussion with a panel of students and experts and professionals sharing their diverse perspectives and experience on student success. And then we're going to open it up to you, the audience, with a Q&A session to give you the opportunity to ask those questions and give us some feedback. There are multiple ways that you can give your feedback today, not just on those that I mentioned, but on Twitter. Please follow us at NJ Higher Ed. So I believe, oh, here's the clicker. Okay. Excuse me. All right, no worries. Stephanie, you can help me out later. And then, here you go. The next slide, we're going to put up there, oh, thank you. All right. So it's NJ Higher Ed on Twitter, and you can ask your question by using the hashtag AskOSHE, Ask, O-S-H-E, and you can submit your questions. And I'm remiss for not mentioning, we are recording live on YouTube on the NJ State Government YouTube channel. So please be mindful of the camera in the back and not to try to be mindful as you're walking past the camera. So, it is with extreme excitement that I get to welcome and introduce a champion and trailblazer when it comes to access and student success. And that is the Chancellor of Rutgers University, Newark, Dr. Nancy Cantor. Nancy, all that applause, she needs no introduction. Nancy Cantor is Chancellor of Rutgers University, Newark, an internationally known social psychologist. She has a long and distinguished record as a leader in higher education. She is widely recognized for advocating for universities to be not traditional ivory towers, removed from the problems of the world, to be anchor institutions in their communities that collaborate with partners from all sectors to fulfill higher education's promise as an engine of discovery, innovation, and social mobility, as well as a cultivator of democratic practice. So with no further ado, Nancy Cantor.
She is one of the best. Not just because she said that about me. No. Thank you, Diana. I'm delighted to welcome to Rutgers, Newark, distinguished state leaders, Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, Senator Cunningham, Councilwoman Cosby, Richard Welbuck from the Governor's Council on Higher Education, and of course, Secretary Smith Ellis. Colleagues in higher education, and I have to call out the partner institutions in the Newark City of Learning Collaborative, from Essex County College, NJIT, Pillar, Bloomfield, Felician, Montclair State, Seton Hall, and Berkeley. And our K-12, our amazing K-12 education partners, the superintendent of the Newark Public Schools, Roger Leone, and the mayor's education director, Tony Richardson. And last but never least, our talented students who constitute our future from colleges and universities across the state. So we're all here in common cause, that is to champion college access and success for the next diverse generation of change makers, our students of New Jersey. As Secretary Smith Ellis has championed, it is critical for New Jersey's prosperity to get to 65% of residents 25 years and older with post-secondary degrees by 2025. 65 by 2025. And if we're to do that, we need to focus on both access and success together. And that's the theme that I would stress. We need to pledge to cultivate a much more expansive talent pool. For example, as my colleague Reggie Lewis will expand on later, we in Newark have left way too many talented students on the sidelines of opportunity in this great city. And so we all have a collective goal to change that picture. At Rutgers Newark, just as one example, our undergraduate population from Newark has increased by 87% in the last 5 years, now representing a full 13.5% of our undergraduates, in part by providing full last-in tuition scholarships to Newarkers with adjusted family incomes of $60,000 or less. Yes, we feel we're on a roll, as many of our sister institutions are, and none of us is stopping. And when we all make commitment to access, we then have to make sure that these talented students succeed in higher education. To do that, we need to partner directly with our K-12 districts, creating dual enrollment and pathway mentoring programs, as the Newark City of Learning Collaborative is doing with the Newark Public Schools. We need to partner across the silos of higher education, too, as the Secretary has really been emphasizing, smoothing the transfer pathways from county colleges in New Jersey, where, as we know, the vast majority of first-generation students will have their first taste of higher education, pathways from county colleges to four-year institutions. We see the success of such pathways right here, for example, in the Bridges to Baccalaureate program in STEM, which has increased the transfer rate from 5 New Jersey Hispanic-serving institution county colleges to institutions like Rutgers, Newark, and others all over New Jersey by 73%. So as we solidify these transfer pathways in high-yield fields like STEM, we need to ensure success within our institutions. As we all know, this involves taking a comprehensive view of student success, from financial aid, think about completion grants to get students to the finish line, to advising. Think about predictive analytics to figure out so advisors can talk about where people routinely fall off that pathway to success. We need to think about social support, recognizing the numerous challenges that students face. For example, providing legal and social support for dreamers, staying alert to the challenges that veterans face, understanding that food insecurity and homelessness are not only issues felt beyond the campus, but on it as well. Then we need to turn to pedagogy, working with faculty to teach for success in fully inclusive classrooms, and I would point to the national program AQ that helps so much. Creating social capital networks, contacts, and career opportunities for these amazing students, as we see in the work that Braven's Career Accelerator does. And when we do this and transform our practices, really come to the table to put our practices on the table, our next generation of students will take it from there. They will change the face of the professoriate of the future, transform the innovation in our workplaces, turn the policy making of our nation on its head, which it needs, and much more. Indeed, I have no doubt that our students are ready to do their part. I look, for example, at the students, some of the students in this room from our Honors Living Learning community, fully half of whom are from Newark, and all of whom are deeply committed to be change makers. And I see the promise of the diversity bonus in action. And our institutions, all of our institutions, are full of such strivers. So it's up to all of us to roll up our sleeves and collaborate to fully empower them. They will make a difference. And I know that Secretary Smith-Ellis has so many ideas on that front, as do our distinguished panelists today. So I'm going to get down and look forward to hearing their wisdom. But welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Cantor. So I'm actually pleased to welcome the chair of the New Jersey Senate Higher Education Committee, Senator Sandra Cunningham, who's here with us today, and we personally thank you for our continued collaborative work together addressing New Jersey residents' needs in post-secondary education. Everyone welcome Senator Cunningham.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me say I feel that I've come home, not because I was a student of Rutgers, but because I grew up about 3 blocks down from here on what was then called High Street. First of all, let me thank our Secretary for Higher Education and her staff for putting this together. You know, as chairperson of the Senate Higher Education Committee, the one thing that we have been talking about year after year after year is that we need a strategic plan. We need something that enables all of the colleges and the universities in this great state to brand ourselves as one educational unit. We need the opportunity for all of us to be on the same page as to where we see higher education going in the state of New Jersey. That can only work well if we have your input. You are the people who are in school. You are the people who have your thoughts, your ideas, and they're ready to listen to you today. So I'm so honored to be here. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the whole program, but it's just good to see so many people sitting here, to see all of you, you students, and the diversity. And this is New Jersey. This is the state of New Jersey, and I'm proud of all of you in what you do in your daily life, and I'm proud that you're all here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. There are a few people I would like to welcome in the audience today. We have Dr. Richard Welbrock from the Governor's Higher Education Council. Thank you for coming. Councilwoman Roshana Cosby. Hi. You have Superintendent Roger Leon. Oh, there you are. And my dear colleague, Senior Policy Advisor in the Governor's Office, Carrie Booker. Are there any university presidents in the room? I want to make sure I don't miss you. Okay, all right. And I want to get a quick pulse of the room. So if you are a university or college administrator, would you please raise your hand? Great. If you're a faculty member, would you raise your hand? If you are a student, can you raise your hand and make some noise? That's wonderful, wonderful. I am very pleased to introduce you to Secretary Dr. Smith Ellis. She currently serves as New Jersey's Secretary of Higher Education, where she is responsible for the policy development and coordination of higher education activities for the state. Smith Ellis previously led work at Lumina Foundation, the nation's largest foundation focused solely on higher education, to advance federal policy to increase attainment and to develop new post-secondary finance models focusing on issues of affordability. Prior to her work in philanthropy, Zakia served as a senior advisor for education at the White House Domestic Policy Council, where she was tasked with developing, informing, and promoting President Obama's higher education policy. She also served in the Obama administration as senior advisor at the U.S. Department of Higher Education, where she developed programmatic policy and budget solutions to respond to pressing challenges in college access, affordability, and completion. Dr. Smith Ellis holds a bachelor's degree in political science and secondary education from Vanderbilt University, a master's degree in education policy and management from Harvard Graduate School of Education, and holds a doctorate in higher education management from the University of Pennsylvania. So, no further ado, everyone, the Secretary of Higher Education, Dr. Zakia Smith Ellis.
All right. So I've never heard my bio read before in an audience where I'm like, man, I didn't go to school at Rutgers. But thank you for welcoming me nonetheless. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today because, as Diana just described, we are in probably thigh deep in thinking about this state plan for higher education, and the legislature is very interested in this work, and we are interested in working with all of you all to get feedback, because one of my favorite kind of passages is about having vision, and the people without a vision will perish. And so right now we don't really have a vision and we don't want to perish. So we need to get that together. Another way of looking at that is a quote that I like to use: if you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. And so I'm also a nerd, so I'm going to share a good deal of data. We're going to go through it very quickly. I think we have somebody else who is clicking through the slide. Oh, I have the clicker and it works now. No, it doesn't. It does? No. Okay. All right, somebody's telling me. Oh, okay, okay. Oh, he's got it. Okay, no, he's got it. Okay. So let me just, as we mentioned, we're trying to get this input on the state plan. We need to kind of think about where we are, and part of that includes, I don't know what's going on. Go back. I'll tell you when to go forward. Okay. Part of that includes looking at where we are now as a state. So I don't want to do too much of this, but I don't think it's useful to have a conversation without some data and just understanding of where things currently stand. So if we can go to who are today's college students in New Jersey, we know that the vast majority of people work while they're in college. I hate to hear when people say, oh, you need to work your way through college. People already are working their way through college. If you are in college and have a job right now, raise your hand. Okay, that's about the same number of people that are in college. I don't know. I don't want to ask if you're here and you don't have a job, because that's probably more than 75% of you. A lot of people are going part-time. I would argue that if we looked at just community colleges, the vast majority of people are in there part-time. We've got a lot of students who are not what you would call traditional age. So maybe you didn't come straight from high school, you stopped out for a minute, and then you're coming back. A lot of adults, I think everybody here is an adult, but let's say more mature adults have worked for a while and realized that maybe the economy has changed and they're just not as competitive, and so have to come back to then get some education. And then just the country is changing, and so we have more people that identify as racial and ethnic minorities. And so the majority of college students right now in New Jersey are minority students in one way or another. So when we look at this, the image I think that sometimes people have in their head when they think about who is going to college and who they're writing policies for is not often this. And so we just need to take a reality check, and we could have had, we didn't get the data point of like the number of students that have children of their own. And Jeanette is going to talk a little bit about that on the panel and some of the work that she's done at Rutgers on advocacy in that area. But I believe the overall 1 in 4 college students has a dependent of their own. So we're not just talking about, you know, kids living on the quad, throwing a frisbee, hanging out all day. It's very much a little bit more complex than that. And one of the other things that we know is that many students are placed into developmental education. So having to take classes that are not full college credit, which can be really frustrating. And there's a lot of interesting research on how we get out of that cycle. But in the meantime, you're kind of using up your financial aid on classes that are not really giving you credit for your credential. So we know right now, these are data for the state of New Jersey, at the two-year institutions, so our county colleges, community colleges, there's only 50% of students are placed in developmental classes. And then at the four-year colleges, a little bit less, but still, I would argue, higher than what you might want to see. So despite all these things, I often hear people kind of get frustrated about college. And we had a panel yesterday about affordability, and which is another topic that we could talk a little bit about today because it ties into access as well, and it ties into student success. But you get frustrated because you're thinking about the debt that people have to take on, and it's like, is college even worth it anymore? Well, I can tell you, definitely it's still worth it. Like on average, this is the returns to a college degree in the state of New Jersey by type of degree. So overall, kind of the median income in the state of New Jersey, which is the dark green, or the light green actually right now, is just under $50,000, okay? That's the median. And if you have a bachelor's degree, it goes up to $60,000. And this is on average, so some people make more, some people make less. Your results may vary, okay? And then if you have a graduate degree, it goes up even higher. Now, this is not a promise. I cannot promise you that you will make exactly this amount, but I'm just here to say when we talk about does college still pay off, in general, yes, it does, okay? Now, we got to do some things to make sure that people actually graduate, because too often what happens, and we'll get into this a little bit and talk about how to prevent it, you start and you may not finish. Now you have debt and you don't have a degree. So maybe you were working at T-Mobile and minimum wage, and you went back to school, you were working, going to school, didn't finish, now you're still working at T-Mobile, now you just got student loan debt. Okay, so that's a worse situation than you were before. So we want to make sure that that is not the case. We want to make sure that students actually finish and that we help support completing credentials. Okay, so this is our goal that actually I can't take full credit for. The last Secretary of Education did a phenomenal job in pulling people around this concept that Dr. Cantor talked about, and that is 65 by 25. By 2025, we want 65% of the people in the state of New Jersey to have a post-secondary credential. To do that, we're going to have to do a couple of things. We're going to need to increase the number of people who actually finish college. We're going to need to increase the enrollment of adults, people that are out there who could benefit from college but aren't currently enrolled. They may be working already. And if we do that, it strengthens not only an individual but our economy as a whole. So we're stronger if we have a more highly educated workforce. Okay? So, but to get there, I'm going to go through some of what I won't call, maybe next time we won't call it gaps. But if you ever got feedback and it was like, well, this is opportunities for improvement, okay? So it's the opportunities, right? Right now, we know that if you're a student with disability or English language learner or from an economically disadvantaged background or one of the minority groups that we looked at before, you're less likely to actually attend college. This is enrollment straight from high school. So who is actually going to college? And we see that there are gaps particularly by race and also by economic status, and who actually goes to college. So what can we do to make sure that we're doing a better job? Now, if you go to college, we actually do quite well in outcomes overall. When you look at the state of New Jersey, we have fairly high graduation rates at our four-year colleges, pretty high in the nation. We're top 5 in the four-year publics and top 10 in all of our four-year, including the private colleges. Unfortunately, we're not that well in the community colleges. We're trying to do what we can to increase opportunities there and to support students. So we have some work to do. But when you look at that kind of overall success, you have to peel back the onion a little bit more again. And this is our community college rates. And I don't share this to be depressing or to shame people, but we have to kind of know what the reality is, again, if we're going to think about getting better. So right now, overall, less than 10% of people end up graduating or transferring from community college within 2 years. And you think of them as 2-year colleges, not 2-year colleges, because people aren't graduating within 2 years. This is just full-time. These aren't people going part-time. It's not like, oh, I'm taking a few classes. These are people taking full-time loads and not graduating within 2 years. There's some, now the administrators, you can send me an email about the iPads data and how it's not all the way correct. I understand that. But for the students that it captures, so for the students who are first-time and full-time, it is accurate. Now, it may not capture all the students, but for those students, this is a dismal situation. Now, when you look at 3 years, you know, people take a little bit longer. That's fine, but you're still talking about 22%. I know we have our superintendent of Newark Public Schools. If this was the rate of high school graduation right now, we would be in a full, I mean, we're already in a full hands on deck, but this would be like apoplectic, right? So the fact that people are paying tuition to have this be the outcome, I think we need to be kind of incensed, and always, every week, we need to be talking about what can we be doing. And I know that Nancy Cantor and many of the folks within Newark are working together on these issues. So this is just at our community college. And then the top one is if you transfer. So that is, many people transfer. They don't necessarily get a degree, but they do transfer to another institution. So, okay, so let's go on. I feel like I've been a little down on the community colleges, and we love community colleges, but we get the point. This is those rates by race, and again, you can kind of see, and I like to break this out just because, again, we have to be honest about what's going on if we want to move forward. All right, so we have a fairly high graduation rate. This is some of our peer states. New Jersey is, again, top 4 in the nation in public college graduation, which is great. But only half of our black students and a little over half of Hispanic students graduate with a bachelor's degree within 6 years. Again, these are people that are going full-time. So in as much as we have the 4th highest in the nation, we still have some work to do, and this means we need to have some additional love and support there, because that means people are taking out debt. It may not be $100,000, but you take out $10,000. A couple years, you can take out a good $20,000 in student loan debt and not have a credential. And you don't have a degree, and you can't get a job that requires a bachelor's degree because you don't have a bachelor's degree. You started, but you didn't, you know, we didn't help you finish. So this is not an indictment on students. I think this is an indictment on us as a system because we didn't create the right pathways to help people succeed. So why does this happen? It's academic, it's financial, it's social. I tend to believe it's a little bit of all of these things. And I think sometimes the financial bleeds into the other things. And I'm going to give you an example. I talked about this in the affordability panel yesterday. If you're working, and you're working 2 jobs, and you barely have time to go to class, and when you leave class, you go to work, and when you finish work, you go to sleep, and you wake up and you go back to class, you don't have a whole lot of time for the actual studying part, the learning part. Now, that may show up as an academic challenge. That's a financial challenge, because if you had the money, you wouldn't have to work so much. Okay? That's a financial challenge. I went to some of the best colleges that, you know, money can buy. And what I found from, I'm not from New Jersey, but I am from Decatur, Georgia. And I didn't go to, you know, necessarily great high school, but I ended up in a really great university that's very wealthy. Spent a lot of money on students. And I had never seen so much money, like, and resources. And it was like, man, this is amazing. If you couldn't write a paper, somebody will help you write the paper. If you have trouble focusing, you can work with the individual tutor to help you focus. And I realized in that moment that all of those students that came from these fancy high schools, they weren't any smarter than my friends from Cedar Grove High School in Ellenwood, Georgia. They just had more money and support. So how can we provide money and support to our students so that they can have the same outcomes? And I will say to all of you right now, if you've ever had a feeling like you weren't good enough or sitting next to somebody, I have been in the White House with President Obama. I've been in a variety of different places, and I will never let anybody let me feel that way anymore, because I know that I can do it just like you can, okay? So we're going to try to think about what can we put forward as a vision for a state so that we're creating better supports in all of these different areas. Let's go on to the next thing. So again, that's our goal. We're going to talk about it today. Is that the end of my slides? Do I have any more? No, okay. Path to the goal. I talked about these things, but just to make them crystal clear, we've got to close gaps in who actually goes from high school to college. We've got to improve completion among people who are already enrolled, which we talked about, and then we have to engage adults. So we have a great panel of people who span from students at private colleges. We've got recent graduate and advocate for student parents. We have folks that are working on this in the college and university campus. And then we have an expert who works at CUNY actually on a groundbreaking initiative to help students succeed. So we will do a more fulsome introduction of the panel in just a minute. But this is what we want to talk about. How do we move forward to help us provide those supports to students that everyone deserves so that we can be strong as a state and strengthen our communities? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into it in just a minute. We want to hear from you, so write down your questions. And thank you for listening to my little bit of data. Okay.
Thank you. We're going to take a brief break, 5 minutes, so want to give you the opportunity to fill out your question. Please submit your question. Staff, please raise your hands. Chad, Tom, Stephanie, everyone, Hashani, raise your hands. Submit your questions. Tweet us at NJ Higher Ed on Twitter. Submit your questions, and we're going to take a brief break and fill up your coffee cups. We'll see you in 5. Okay, everyone, one last call for questions. One last call. Dylan, right here, please bring your questions to the front. Thank you. Hi. All right, everyone. If you can please come back to your seats, we are going to resume and shortly start the panel. So I would like to invite the secretary to please come up, who will introduce the panelists. Thank you.
So one thing I forgot to do before we introduce the panelists and was to mention there are a variety of ways that we're getting feedback. So Diana mentioned, here directly we're doing comment cards, but we also have a survey. So if you don't, feel like this is the best format, we have a survey. It probably takes about 15 minutes to complete. We'll send it out through your student government and things like that, but we want to hear from people directly. And then there's also just if you go on our website and it's not the survey format is not what you want, but you just have thoughts and you want to share them, feel free to just email us, okay? We want to get any kind of, if it's not, the questions didn't suit your needs, feel free to just come that way too. So be on the lookout for that. Now, I am just excited about this panel because there's so many people doing good work. In the city of Newark, but also just in the state more broadly and a little bit beyond our borders in New York at CUNY. So let me begin, though, with Dr. Did I just make you a doctor? Or you? Okay, that's okay. Reginald Lewis, the executive director. I wish I had that power to confer. The executive director of the Newark City of Learning Collaborative. And Reginald has served in this role since September 2016, and I've heard, so this as an aside, I heard a lot of great work from Dr. Cantor, but also just in the news about this collaboration within Newark to bring a variety of, government organizations, so like kind of state agencies, but also private philanthropy and businesses all together to talk about how to help students in Newark succeed. He previously served as executive director of the Chad School Foundation, which was a Newark-based education policy and advocacy organization that seeks to improve conditions in public school systems serving disadvantaged students. In addition to his duties at NCLC, he serves as an assistant professor of professional practice at the Rutgers University Newark School of Public Affairs and Administration. So, Reginald, can you come up and join the panel? Okay, now Donna Linderman is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at CUNY. Her portfolio includes a broad array of university-wide programs designed to support the academic preparation and degree success of CUNY students, including the Accelerated Study in Associate Programs, ASAP program, a nationally recognized associate degree completion program that will enroll 25,000 students across 9 CUNY colleges in this school year. And it's currently being replicated in 3 states. So I've heard so much about ASAP as a model for community college success, and I am so thrilled that Donna is able to be here with us today. So thank you. Now, next we have Dr. David Hood, who is Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education and Dean of University College at Montclair State University. In his role, Dr. Hood has a broad responsibility for the development and implementation of policies and practices that assure the university's delivery of high-quality undergraduate education and students' successful and timely completion of their degrees. His research includes retention, leadership style, school leadership, college access, and advising structures. And before you clap for Dr. Hood, let me say I was taking a tour of Montclair State, and he showed us kind of the area and the vision for what they're trying to do there, and it was just so exciting. So I'm glad that he's able to join us today. I don't know where he is. There you are. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Next, we have Anjanette Vidia, okay, thank you, who is the founder and project leader of Honor Your Mamas. Anjanette is a speaker, activist, and advocate for teen parents' achievement and ability, developing and hosting workshops for pregnant and parenting teens in local high schools, as well as anti-bias workshops for educators and birth workers. So she is 100% on the ground looking out for the students that we talked about earlier in a real way. She's the founder and immediate past president of Rutgers Students with Children, which is an on-campus group of scholars and feminists who champion educational equity and seek to transform higher education to enable greater access. I am also excited about this because just in general, so everything that she's doing, I am in awe of, and I would just let her do 3 hours here by herself if we could. But also, when I first got here to New Jersey, and I asked, you heard I came from DC, and I asked people, who's doing work in New Jersey, who should I connect with? And I don't know if you realize this, but somebody said, oh my goodness, there's this woman who's at Rutgers, and you've got to meet her. She's doing work with student parents, and I filed it away, and I was like, okay, I'm going to meet her, And then we were planning for this, and someone else said, there's a woman, and I said, that's the same person. And then I was at an event, and she was there, and she asked the question. I said, oh my God, you're the person that I'm supposed to meet. So I'm glad that you agreed to be on this panel with us today. Thank you. Please join us. And last but certainly not least, we have, okay, there you are, Amanda Chang, who is a sophomore at Seton Hall University. She is the Student Government Association secretary, and she's a double major in international relations and economics and minoring in Chinese. Yes, right? So she volunteers also at the Seton Hall chapter of the Food Recovery Network. She's passionate about volunteering, public service, and cheerleading. She's a member of the school's cheerleading squad, where she cheers for the Division I men's and women's basketball team at all of their home games. I'm going to be looking for her on TV. But also, we did a visit to Seton Hall where we talked with a roundtable of students. And Amanda was there and just so passionate and so committed. And so when we were looking to have this conversation with students in particular, wanted to make sure that she was able to come and join us for the conversation. So please join us. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to start out with just, we've heard a lot of this data information, and we kind of got all the slides, and you all know the research. I'm wondering, just to begin, I gave very lofty introductions of everyone as much as I could, but I was just asked, why do you think you're here on a panel about student success? What is your connection, and how do you view your work? We can start we can jump around, but if you would like to start, Reginald, that'd be great.
Well, again, welcome to Rutgers University, Newark. At the Newark City Learning Collaborative, we exist to ensure that all of Newark prospers. And the only way for all of Newark to prosper is to ensure that its residents have the credentials, the skills that are needed to be a part of what's happening in our city. We also have a goal, 25 by 2025. That is to ensure that by the year 2025, 25% of our population has at least an associate's degree or higher. But beyond that numeric target, we're working to create a college-going culture. We're working to create a system of supports for young people so that we can ensure that more of our young people get to and through college. And so that's obviously my connection to this panel here this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So One of the things that I'm the most proud of about my work at CUNY is that we've really overturned a lot of myths about what is and is not possible for our students. CUNY enrolls 274,000 degree-seeking students across its institutions, and especially at our associate level, the rates were very similar to what the Secretary shared with you. And lots of stuff was tried, a little bit here, a little bit there. Let's kind of adjust the chair here and move the rug over there, and nothing was working. So what I'm most proud of is that we took a comprehensive approach through some of the programs that I oversee, and we were able to see really dramatic results for the students we serve, scale that work, measure it really rigorously, and then really start to see some pretty dramatic changes at the system level. So I'm proud to be part of a myth-busting kind of group of innovators at CUNY, connected with our partners in the city of New York who funded our work, and increasingly at the state level as well. So I think that's why I'm here. I believe that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to share some of it with you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. I think that I'm here because over the past 12 years of my professional journey, I've been doing the student success work at small private institutions, mid-sized state institution, and now the very large state institution. I'm currently Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education and Dean of our University College, the founding dean. So University College is a concept that's been around probably around the nation for about 20 years. And our primary goal is to ensure that first and second year students are successful and that they transition into their major with confidence. But specifically at Montclair, we understood that our students who came into the university undeclared were not persisting and not being retained at the rates that students who were direct admits into their college. So our president and some faculty members, they began to research the problem and came up with a solution, and the solution was our University College, which opened its doors in September. We have about 2,100 students. About 863 of those students are continuing into their second year. We have about 1,100 who are first-time freshmen, which represents about a third of our incoming freshman student population, and then a mix of the rest of them are transfer students from four-year institutions as well as the community college. So I'm really excited about the work that we're doing at Montclair to address the issues of our diverse student population, as well as building a future for our students through our new strategic plan and providing our students with a transformative student experience.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Amanda, as previously said, and I think I'm here because I am a student. I am a sophomore, so I'm in my second year of undergraduate. As a student, a recipient of the Educational Opportunity Fund, I definitely have that opportunity to attend college because it definitely is a great privilege to attend. And, you know, I use all the resources that I have at my school to make sure that I can do everything I can to pursue myself in a degree and to pursue my future development professionally.
So I think that I'm here because times are changing. I never would have thought that doing this work would have gained national attention. I'm happy that policymakers are seeing that engaging the voices of people with lived experiences is critical to making real effective change. Just a bit about my past history. I came from a poverty background. I dropped out of high school in 9th grade and attended community college. The reason that I attended community college, I'll back up a little bit, was because I got pregnant. I was pregnant with my first daughter at 17, and I realized that in order to provide for her, I would need a degree. I knew that early on. So she's the one who caused me to get my GED, enroll in community college, and once there, my professors were like, you know, you should seek out a 4-year degree. Unfortunately, even though it was a miracle that I had reached the doors of higher education, there were no supports and services for someone like me when I got there, and I I failed out twice. So when I eventually came back, and when we talk about, I'll take a sidebar again, when we talk about the number of people who universities fail, it's not just that, you know, the people themselves fail out, it affects whole communities and generations. My single mother was looking towards my success. You know, I promised her that I would take care of her. My daughter's success depended on me, and I failed. So it's not just that it was a financial burden. I dove into a deep depression, and all of the compounding factors of the reality of my life became so much harder to bear. And there's 900,000 college dropouts in the state of New Jersey alone. And like Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis was discussing, the burden for student parents is disproportionately mothers of color. There's 1 out of 2 Black women and 1 out of 3 Latina women in higher education are raising a dependent child. And of the 26% of undergraduates nationwide who are student parents, 40% of those are single mothers disproportionately of color. So we're talking about a huge population that's often invisible. So when I came back after having been married, reached a different socioeconomic status, I realized that the personal is political, my circumstances were being repeated, and that I had an obligation to do something about it. So that's why I've been working to change institutional practices as well as uplift the community. And I think I'm so delighted to be here. I'm excited about everything you said, and I think there's an opportunity for diverse stakeholders to tackle this issue and to get it right in New Jersey, because honestly, we're a little bit behind.
All right. Well, in that case, let's jump right in. What should we be doing that we're not doing right now? Okay, we've talked about the problem. Like what, you know, we've touched on a little bit, but I would love to dig in a little bit deeper. And this is for, before we do that, I was thinking that this might happen. We are going to do that, and just so you stay right here, stay on the edge of your seats for like all the solutions that we're going to talk about. But we have the Lieutenant Governor who is a fantastic advocate and has her own higher education journey, but is going to join us for just a minute. And so, you know, sometimes you're doing these things and you're trying to get this timing and everything exactly right. I think she's here, but I want to make sure that I don't see her coming in. So, okay, so.
Diana said keep going.
Diana says keep going. So, but I just want to prep you that if I say, for a minute, we're going to pause, that's what we're doing. Okay? All right? Everybody there with that? All right, so what can we be doing? What should we be doing? What are some best practices that we've seen for helping students? And I'm happy for anyone to kick this off.
Sure, I'll start. So one of the things that we found when we were starting to build our ASAP program, which the Secretary mentioned before, was most students that came to CUNY at our associate levels enrolled full-time. It was about 85 to 90% of them enrolled full-time. That's not what it looked like a year later. So there were all kinds of barriers getting in their way. There were financial resources, students losing their financial aid, the costs of textbooks, the costs of transportation, the ability to get classes that they needed when they needed it, you know, kind of shoddy advisement that was, you know, not very structured, not very coherent, and a sense that students didn't understand kind of these Byzantine, complicated systems and processes and hoops that they had to jump through, frankly. So what we tried to do when we started the program in 2007 was to kind of lay these all out and to say, what can we do to systematically remove as many barriers as we possibly can? I really liked the way you described that. There's a lot of institutional barriers that we create that are just there. Oh, that's the way we've always done things. That does not have to be the way things are. So we tried to first address kind of the barriers to students going full-time by waiving tuition and fee gaps after application of financial aid. So in ASAP, if you get $1 of financial aid and you have a gap, we waive the difference, including your fees. A Metro card costs $121, unlimited monthly Metro card. So if you have to choose between getting to school and eating, chances are people are going to choose to eat. So we provide unlimited monthly Metro cards. So the unlimited is important so students can travel freely between work, home, and school. Many of our students also are raising families and have dependent responsibilities. And then finally, we provide textbook assistance. So I won't go through every single element of the program, but we went through each barrier one by one, creating coherent schedules, providing one assigned advisor who works with the student from the minute they walk in the door until the day they graduate, to help them with their goal setting, refer them to services if they're experiencing struggle, speak to their faculty members. And then finally, just the importance of creating connected community. At commuter schools, it's a lot of students just come to class and leave, and we really tried to create a family setting in ASAP among staff and students, and to create peer opportunities. So if I kind of snapped my fingers and we popped into an ASAP office right now at any of our 9 colleges, the sense of kind of warmth and community would kind of exude out of the walls and all the people in that room, because everyone has each other's back. So I think it's very critical to very systematically look at, there is no one problem. There are many problems that come together that impede students' progress. The problems are complicated and comprehensive. The response needs to be as well. So that's what we've tried to do in our ASAP program.
Well, thank you. And the comprehensive set of solutions is something that we definitely want to get into. We are joined today, as I mentioned, by our fabulous and wonderful Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, who was a leader in the legislature prior to becoming Lieutenant Governor. She is a force within Essex County, and she has her own story of how higher education has helped her to get to where she is today. I am so thankful that she's able to stop by, and I'm going to ask her to come up to the podium now.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure for me to be here at Rutgers, Newark. I'm no stranger to Rutgers, Newark. I'm no stranger to the Robeson Center. And I have a lot of friends and colleagues that are here today as you participate in this forum that our Secretary of Higher Education has organized, Student Success. And I think I see Dr. Diane Hill here, and some years ago she had me do classes here at Rutgers Newark on achievement motivation. So I know a thing or two about students and student success. I was told by Ms. Gonzales that, you know, many of you as students, you had Senator Cunningham here earlier, and she told you a little bit about her personal story. But I am a lifelong student. I'll start there. There's nothing I like better than learning something every single day. So when I think about student success, if you're successful as a student, you're going to be successful in life. There is no doubt about it. And I started my student success journey, quite frankly, the day my mother and father enrolled me in kindergarten. I am someone that just always loved school. And I grew up in an era where, you know, you were very conforming. If the teacher told you sit, you sat. If the teacher said walk in a straight line, you walked in a straight line. So I didn't know that at the time, but now that I am older and have had more experience, I know that a part of the educational success journey is creating and learning discipline. And a lot of times, educators will have us do things and teachers will have us do things and we don't like it and we think it's stupid and we think, what are we doing this for? But we're doing it because we are being trained to be, first of all, critical thinkers and analytical thinkers. And to me, if students grasp onto the concept of critical thinking and analytical thinking, you will be a successful student. So I started my educational journey. Well, actually, I started kindergarten and first grade at a school in East Orange. The school's not there anymore. It was called Eastern School. But I started there. I still remember a first grade teacher I had. Her name was Miss Patrick. And she had red hair, and she looked like I Love Lucy. She was tall and thin, and she wore pleated skirts and a crisp white blouse. And when she'd tell us to form a line, if your line wasn't straight, she'd step on your feet. So I learned quick to conform. And my family then moved to Newark after first grade, and we moved to the South Ward of Newark. And the first school I went to was Hawthorne Avenue School. Went there for a couple of years. And then what was going on in Newark at the time was issues about segregated schools. And so the Board of Education at the time came up with a plan to make sure that there was more integration in all the schools around the city. So when that happened, I was transferred and I went to Chancellor Avenue School. So I graduated from Chancellor Avenue School, and then I went right next door from my high school. I went to Weequahic High School. So I'm a proud graduate of Weequahic High School. Go Indian Nation. All right, we got some in the back. So I decided that I would go to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and Lincoln University is the oldest historically black college in the country, 1854. Graduates include Thurgood Marshall, our first black Supreme Court justice. We had Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of an independent Ghana. Langston Hughes graduated from Lincoln University, and it was a school for all men. Because black men at that period of time, in the 1800s, the early 1900s, there were a lot of colleges that would not accept them because of discrimination. And that is how Lincoln University was formed. A group of professors from Yale and Princeton got together, and they got together with the Presbyterian Church, and they helped them create Lincoln University. When I left there, I went to Columbia University, and I pursued a master's degree. And I'm taking the time to tell you all of these things because education is something that is never finished. And so as students, I want you to not think in terms of, oh, I'm going to get my bachelor's degree and then I'm done. Or I'm going to get my master's degree and then I'm done. You must commit to lifelong learning. And none of us is ever going to be educated up to the level that we know it all or we don't need to know anything else. So as students, I want to tell the students, keep your mind open and always have a quest and a thirst for knowledge. Now, I know that my millennials in the audience are very technologically inclined. And I know that because I can just go up and down the street and I see your heads bent down over those little devices. And I see those little white wires sticking out of your ears. And I love the fact that we have so much technology now, and technology has really changed the landscape for you as learners and as students. But and you can do it on a Kindle, because I'm getting ready to now talk about literacy and reading. If we want to pursue success as students, we need to be well read. And I talk to a lot of young people and they tell me they don't like to read. Well, make a personal commitment that you are going to develop a love of reading. Because if you develop a love for reading, you can become a subject expert on almost anything. So when I think about my own success as a student and my own professional and career success, I became an avid reader in elementary school. I mean, in the summer, I would go to the library. You could only take out 5 books at a time. I would go to the library. I would take out 5 books. I'd be finished reading them by the end of the week, and then I'd go get 5 more. So what did that do for me? It meant that when I had classroom work to do as a student, I don't care if it was a required subject, you know, for me to gain credits towards graduation. I was going to enter that class already having some knowledge about that subject. So I would, if some of you are here and you don't like to read, I'd like to encourage you to read. And, you know, Audible is all right, you know. You can order yourself some Audible things, but there is no greater pleasure than having a book in your hand, curling up with a cup of tea and reading, or on the beach in the summer. You know, there's nothing better than that. So I want to encourage you to read in terms of student success. And then the other thing, there are always going to be obstacles and barriers in your way. There's always going to be frustration. There are always going to be people who you're just not going to like in your college environment, but don't let that impede you from looking at what the end goal is. Now, I started out, ironically, wanting to be a fashion designer. But I had to go to a special school for that. I had to go to a Fashion Institute of Technology or a Pratt. So I get to Lincoln University and I go see my counselor and I got to, you know, fill out my classes. And I tell her what my occupational goal is. And she said, well, this is a liberal arts school. You can't go here for that. So I didn't know at the time, well, I could stay there until January or the end of the year and then transfer, but I'm glad I didn't. But I'm telling you that to say that what you start out as in your college career may not necessarily be the hand that you're dealt and what you end up doing in life. And so that's where I started. So then I decided I'll be a political science major. But I had this professor, Professor Atherton. She was strict, and she was mean, and so my law career went out the window. So that's when I decided I didn't want to do that. So I ended up as an undergrad in sociology, which I loved because it gave me everything. It gave me economics, it gave me human services, it gave me mathematics and statistics, so that is what I chose to do. I never aspired to be an elected official. And if we turn the clock back to my college years, you could never have told me I would have ended up spending 15 years in the state legislature, 4 of those years as the first woman and first black woman to be Speaker of the House in New Jersey. Yeah. You could have never told me this is what I would have done. And then subsequently being a lieutenant governor, this was nothing that I ever planned or set out to do. But what I am telling you this for is to encourage you to really believe the more knowledge you have, the more content knowledge you develop, you will become an expert on anything, and you can be anything. Now, my friends, especially my friends who are here, and I'm looking at Gary. Gary used to work for me in the state legislature, and he now works for Senator Booker. But there is nothing I don't know, I have to tell you. And my friends call me a walking encyclopedia. Pick a letter in the alphabet, pick a subject, and I'll give you a 30-minute soliloquy on it. And that's because I was a student who focused in on being successful. So I'm going to wrap up by saying it's about discipline, it's about perseverance, it's about not letting any barrier or roadblock get in your way, and it's about understanding that thing that you think is such a big hurdle today, you'll look back on it some years later and you'll say to yourself, that was no big deal. And so I just want to challenge you as students to strive to be successful students. And if you do some of the things that I have described to you, you will achieve student success. Without really having to, I was able to always be a Dean's List student. I was always able to achieve a 4.0 GPA, and I was able to do it easily without sweat. Without sweat. When I left my undergraduate school and went to grad school, I never bought a book. I didn't have to. And I didn't have to because early on in my educational career, I learned the concepts of discipline. And I was a Girl Scout, and they told us to be prepared. So I was always prepared. And I learned to form good social relationships. And that's the other thing that I would challenge you all to do. There's a Rutgers grad that just became the mayor of Paterson, New Jersey. His name is Andre Saya. I taught a class here at Rutgers Newark called The Theory and Practice of Nonprofit Management, and Andre was in my class. I used to tell them, cultivate your contacts, cultivate your contacts. When he was sworn in as mayor July 1, and he had me swear him in, when I approached the podium, he whispered in my ear, "Professor, I did what you told me. I cultivated my contacts." And he's the mayor of Paterson today. Thank you.
So again, I am so thankful to the Lieutenant Governor for coming and sharing her story in higher education and being a lifelong learner. What we want to do is make sure that every student has that opportunity to be a lifelong learner. And I like to say everything about going to college should be easy except for the learning part. So we were just hearing Donna talk about how to make sure that students don't have to deal with the getting back and forth, creating systems that support students. So I wanted to pick back up and see if any of the other panelists had work to share about how do we make sure that students have that wraparound services to make sure that they're successful.
So unfortunately, the Lieutenant Governor's experience is not the experience of most of our students who are matriculating at our campuses now. And I really don't think that we've done the work in higher ed to truly understand the students that we're serving today and the issues that they bring to the table, the challenges that they bring to the table. And so we've asked the students, or we tried to make the students conform to who we are as an institution, instead of the institutions conforming and meeting the needs of the students. Yes. And I think much of that is driven by the fact that, institutions are dealing with limited budgets. And so when you talk about the services that are needed to ensure that students are successful in their matriculation, when you have decreased funding from the state, then what are the first things that are going to go? It's those wraparound services. And so unfortunately, we're not, at many of our public institutions, and not just limited to New Jersey, but across the country, we're not blessed with unlimited endowments. So the types of things that we need, such as well-structured, holistic advising programs, which I think are one of the key elements to a student success culture, we're just not able to fund them. Fortunately, this year at Montclair, our leadership, they took the bite, and in addition to creating the University College, we are beginning the process of developing advising centers in all of our colleges, which I think is going to be transformational for our success of our students. So we're hosting our first advising forum and summit on December 6th to begin the conversation around what is advising at Montclair. It is far beyond just meeting with the student and helping them to get their pen to register for class. If you're talking about true success, it is a full wraparound where you're really getting to know the students, you understand their challenges, and so when they come to you and they say, well, I don't think I want to be a chemist anymore, I think I want to major in theater, and you're able to have those very candid and frank conversations, helping them to develop the path that's going to provide the least amount of time to degree, And many times, frankly, the faculty who have traditionally done advising, they're just not equipped. They're very bright individuals in their fields and in their profession. But when you talk about, okay, what courses are going to help me transition from being a chemist to going over to theater now, because I was a chemist because my parents said that's what they wanted, because I'm going to be really wealthy if I'm a chemist. But if I'm a theater, then, you know, it might be kind of shaky. And now you've determined what your passion is, and you need someone to guide you through that process. Well, in the old way of thinking, you thought that the students were just supposed to get from A to B by themselves, and there weren't going to be.
You give them the book.
You just give them the book and you do it,
Yeah.
But they really need guidance. And if we're talking about time to degree and really getting students out in 4 years so that we're decreasing their debt, then we need to provide those support structures that get them through that process. Because for many of our students, they're working, they're still first gen, so they don't have a support system back home that allows them to say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, how do I do this? That support system is not there, so the universities have to become that support system. And that's why I'm so excited to be doing the work that I'm doing at Montclair.
Yeah. I would just add to David and Donna's point that it's really about being student-centric and not looking at our students as if they're presenting just a mere set of problems or looking at them from a deficit standpoint. Why should a student with an issue have to navigate 5 or 6 different offices just to have an issue resolved? If we are designed in a way in which we are student-oriented, we're going to simplify the process for those students to access services. We're going to look at ways to co-locate services. We're going to look at ways to actually look at the comprehensive set of needs presented by our students. And so I would just add that, and to David and Donna's points, it's about a comprehensive approach and also being designed or realigning services in a way in which students know that they can find supports where they need it, when they need it, and also feel as though someone's there for them. One other point with respect to David, it's not just an institutional response, right? And so I agree. NCLC is housed here at Rutgers University in Newark, proudly so. We have members that include NJIT, Berkeley College, Pillar College, Essex County College, Rutgers Biomedical Health Sciences. Beyond Greater Newark, we have Bloomfield College, Felician University, Montclair State University, and Seton Hall University. So all of us are thinking about persistence. All of us are thinking about completion. But we also know from our recent work with a report that we just released back in July that there's a community response as well that David alluded to, that others have alluded to. Our students need to feel that there still connects from the home base. Just a couple of stats. We found in our report, which was the first analysis of comprehensive college-going trends for the city of Newark, looking at cohorts of graduating students from the classes of 2011 through 2016, that 83% of them matriculated in the state of New Jersey. I'll say that again. 83% of our young people found an institution of higher learning within the state of New Jersey. 67% of them actually matriculated just 10 miles from New Jersey, from Newark, I should say. So the majority of our young people are actually staying closer to home. We see that as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us, one, to remain connected to our young people. Everything from those carrying calls to those care packages. How many of you remember the graham crackers? I certainly do. So looking at promising approaches and strategies that allow us to allow those young people, particularly first-generation students, as David mentioned, to know that the supports are still there. Also promising practices, KIP through college and other approaches, the hand-holding that takes place when we look at our partner at St. Benedict's Prep, so that we know that kids can be connected to alumni to create peer networks and supports. Various ways in which our young people know that in this new world that they are not alone.
I wanted to add to that if I can. I know we're probably limited on time, so I'll be conscious of it. But just to piggyback off of what everyone else was saying, sometimes the packaging of existing services can mean the difference between success or failure for a student in any given semester. During my advocacy for student parents, I would often see that a student parent was unaware of the Dean of Students office, that they didn't know that Rutgers offered free legal services, that there was no knowledge of the victim prevention, domestic violence program. They also did not know anything about financial aid that they could have access to as far as scholarship donors for their particular situation. So it's difficult because as a student parent, when you're low income, first generation, you're often navigating the labyrinth of bureaucracy for social services, and they're at odds with what your university is offering you as well. Mm-hmm. So the Dean of Students office often has a caseworker. I'm not sure what the case is at other institutions, but ours did. And that person was not known to student parents. Student parents were not known to that person. So there was a disconnect just in the packaging of services. So in our advocacy work, that was actually on our list of demands in our petition for support of student parents, was a website just letting us know. Because actually in my own case and in the case of many people that I know, just accessing those services could have kept them in school.
Going off of advising too, because I double major, I didn't decide that I was going to be a double major until my second semester, first year. But now I just registered maybe about 2 weeks ago, and I was bouncing back from maybe about 4 to 5 different offices, and it was definitely a struggle because not everyone's going to be able to, just see you right away. You have to set up an appointment, and if you have extracurriculars, if you have work, if you have class, it's hard to get access to those, and sometimes people won't say like the information in the email. They'll just say, oh, please come to my office, set up an appointment. But what if I don't have the time to do so? And that was definitely a hard time for me. And when I went to these advising appointments in my free time when I could, they were often saying, oh, well, did you talk to this person? And I said, yes. And then they were like, okay, go back. And I said, but I just met with them, so why am I going back? And it was definitely difficult. And, every college, every university has a set curriculum for their diploma, for their major. And I know that something that kind of restricted me was I want to study abroad. That's something that I want to do to experience whatever I can. But, financial aid, timing, my restrictions to my curriculum. So as a diplomacy student, I'm required to take a language, which is why I take Chinese. And I'm required to go two courses beyond advanced, but I take advanced my junior year, which means in order to graduate on time, I would have to stay for my senior year, first and second semester. But I also, if I didn't have that language requirement, I would also be able to graduate early. So now that's the reason why I picked up a second major, but now I'm going to different places. I'm restricted from studying abroad. I can't do this, I can't do that. And it definitely hurts. I mean, I do want to travel, and hopefully one day I'll be able to make it work, and working with my advisors and deans of students and everything else. But in that sense, I definitely am restricted. And one thing that does help though is, as a recipient of the EOF, Seton Hall has a program called the Educational Opportunity Fund. Program. So those students who receive those funding are in a program. And I remember my freshman year, I was required to do 4 hours of constructive study work. So it was basically a study hall. And that really did help me. I think that as a first generation student and as an EOF recipient, students often have trouble, especially transitioning from high school to college. It's a whole new environment. I did not know what I was doing at all. But having a tutor and having those study hours really did help me to, push to do my homework or to study instead of, fooling around with my friends or like staying in the cafeteria for 5 hours and doing absolutely nothing. So certain things such as, having certain study hours did help me transitioning into college for sure.
Can I ask, we're gonna go into questions, so I don't know if you have given and people will continue to kind of give their thoughts as we get into the question and answer and feedback from the audience. So if you have those on the cards, you should write them now. Non-tuition financial supports. So you started to talk about it a little bit, but I would love for other folks to talk about kind of what supports, other than the kind of academic pieces, which are huge, to the extent that there are ways that we're supporting students on those non-tuition financial costs. And we have the executive director of HESA here. So, if you have issues with, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that. But we are thinking about, obviously, the financial supports. But what kind of beyond those things can we provide to students?
So, thankfully, it's kind of in the national dialogue now that college costs more than tuition and fees. Eating is expensive. Traveling is expensive. Books are expensive.
Books, yes.
Crazy expensive.
Childcare.
Yeah, childcare. So it is really critical that you look at the full cost of attendance when you think about what are the resources we need to put around students. I would also add, even though technically it's tuition, and thank you for the return of Summer Pell, getting to go to college in the summer is so critical for students, especially if you're supporting a family and you want to graduate on time, but you can only manage part-time or even 12 credits a semester. So I would say it's absolutely critical to think about the entire cost of attendance, and to the extent you can, really build in transportation, textbook resources, and the opportunities to take winter and summer courses. We also have a student leader and mentor program in ASAP, so students get the opportunity to, if they're selected, to work and get on-the-job experience while they're in school. So, not that working at the Gap or JCPenney's or Jamba is a bad idea if that's what you need to do, but if you can make the same amount of money working on campus, getting some of those skills, those relationship skills that the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, which are so critical when students transition, I would say it's really important to think very creatively and broadly about the full cost.
Yes, and I should mention, just yesterday, our Commissioner of Human Services announced that students should know, if you are at an income where you could be eligible for SNAP, for the most part, if you are enrolled, you can get SNAP benefits. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. So we're trying to do a better job, particularly in the community colleges, with helping people connect to those benefits for which they are already able just in the world. She expanded SNAP eligibility to some community colleges just yesterday. So we have even more students who can get that. That's food assistance, if you're not familiar with it. So that's one thing that we're just working together to think about. How can we do kind of unlikely partnerships to help students with those needs?
I wanted to just briefly mention the C Campus grant. It's Childcare Access, means parents in school, and federal dollars have just allocated even more recently to that grant. Childcare on campus is so critical. The graduation and retention rate for student parents is like 4 to 8%. It's terrible, but when there are supports and services, it actually goes higher than the national average to about 80% because it's a highly motivated population. The other thing is there's this program in New Jersey called Parenting Link, is where high schools have on-site childcare. They have an amazing success rate of, I think, 98% or something of the high school students graduate. And that, I would argue, is simply because they put a childcare facility right there. So we need childcare on campus. It would help us tremendously. The University of Michigan came up with a novel way to subsidize it. They take $1 out of every student's tuition. So I know that funding issues are always a concern, but we always find ways to subsidize the athletics department. I would say we find ways to fund people that we want in our institutions.
So we're going to continue the conversation, but I want to bring in some of the voices of some of the questions that we have. I'm looking at Stephanie to tell me how we should do the question portion. I don't see microphones out there, so you let me know.
They're right up here.
Oh, okay, you've got it. I hear it.
I am Stephanie Thatchik. I am Director of Policy and Outreach, and I am joined by Maisha Howard, who is Director of Finance. We are going to start the question portion with Dr. Jacob Farbman from Trenton. I think
that's him.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Madam Secretary, thank you for doing this. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for being here. Thank you both, and thank you, David, for your leadership with the community colleges and the Community College Opportunity Grant. It's a wonderful opportunity for our community colleges, and we look forward to working with you as we expand it to more students throughout the state. Thank you for your leadership also with the Department of Human Services to expand food eligibility to students, SNAP eligibility. One thing that we can work on right away, and I'm interested to get the panelists' feedback on this, is it's been mentioned briefly, and that is one of the barriers to student success, and we see it time and time again at the community colleges, are the increasing cost of textbooks. And we have a plan at the community colleges to save our students $20 million over the next 4 years just by addressing open education resources in the top 10 highest general education courses. So I'm wondering, what type of experience do you folks have with incorporating open education resources to help address student success, and how can we work collectively as a state to really address this for all of our students?
Thank you, Jake. This is, he's the head of the Student Success Center at the New Jersey Council on County Colleges, so thankful for his work. And textbook costs are huge, so the whatever we can be doing to help students pay for those, I want to hear about it.
So they're so expensive, and I'm shameless. In ASAP, I'm constantly haranguing our vendors. Can you give us a bigger discount? And they're terrible. The discount keeps shrinking, but there's a silver lining. CUNY as a system is going big with open educational resources. So we're working directly with our librarians and our faculty members to redevelop their courses around OER. And if you go into kind of our universal course search system, classes that have no textbook costs are flagged. So students can register for zero textbook cost courses. The number is growing every year. And actually, some of our colleges are creating entire majors that are zero textbook cost. Especially at our community colleges. So we're aggressively moving into that, because the best phone call I could make the coming year would be to tell Barnes & Noble, guess what? We don't need you anymore, because we're going big in OER.
I mean, for my textbooks, my sister is older than me, so I have the experience, and she kind of gives me all my college advice when I need it. I tend to run off of Chang. And if not, I don't rent my textbook maybe until 3 weeks into the semester. I analyze my syllabus like crazy to see if I really do need a textbook. And if it's something that's like weeks in advance, or if it's not in class, like I'll find someone else in my class to mooch off of, and hey, can you copy this for me? So that kind of helps a little bit. And if I do end up renting the textbook, I sometimes return it within that 2-week period. A lot of my a lot of my professors nowadays our work is analyzing works of policy, and so a lot of those are accessible online, not even through like online textbooks or anything, which really does help. Seton Hall has a library, online library, where if you type in something, usually you can find it. You also can rent books from other universities or colleges, which is really beneficial. You can only have the books for 3 weeks, but you just tell your friends, hey, rent it for me, and then can I have it? And they just have to give it back, that's all. But textbooks are tremendously expensive, and it definitely adds to the cost. Student Government Association at Seton Hall is definitely, our Academic Affairs Committee is working with our bookstore to lower the cost. Hopefully it's being implemented soon, because if I can't find it on Chang, then my only resource left is the bookstore, and sometimes those books are expensive too. So I do believe that Seton Hall University is really working hard with online resources and with the bookstore to reduce the cost of textbooks.
And on textbooks, that was one of the first things I worked on in DC was textbook stuff, and that was like 10, 11 years ago now. We were talking about, maybe people could, OER wasn't as big as now. So just so you know, OER is online educational resources, and it's basically free textbooks online. So instead of having to purchase a physical textbook that costs a lot, having a free online textbook, and sometimes they have partnerships where you can get them printed at the university for free. And I know one of the community colleges, I believe, is moving to a subscription model where the college is paying for the subscriptions for the students. So like Chang and places that have the subscription so that students don't have to. The tough thing is that you have to work with all the faculty. And, that is just a challenge because, faculty have academic freedom to have, assign what you want to assign. But one thing that I found has been helpful, and we can think about innovative ways to work together on this, is to just let the faculty know how much the books cost. And if you can share with people in advance, I find that students really appreciate it because then you can strategize. I mean, that's not, the ideal is that the textbooks not cost so much, but at least if you're not finding out about it like right beforehand, if you know what your textbooks are going to be in advance. Who else do we have? We want you to, you want to, what's your textbook question? I feel bad because people are going. Oh, okay. You have a solution. Yes, solutions. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Maisha?
Nicole from South Orange.
Nicole from South Orange.
Good evening. My question is, are there any plans to create opportunities between the K through 12 system and the higher education system to collaborate to reach students at an earlier age?
Absolutely. We're working very closely with our partner, the Newark Public Schools, but all of the K-12 systems here in the city of Newark in particular, in two distinct ways. One is beginning the conversation about post-secondary planning a lot earlier. We know that one issue is that we wait too long, right? Why are we talking about post-secondary options during the junior or senior year? So having those conversations with our primary and middle grades in particular, we've begun that work through the Newark City Learning Collaborative, but also creating college viable K-16 pathways, right? So we run something here at Rutgers through NCLC known as the College Pathway Initiative, in which we are literally working with cohorts of 10th graders, and we follow them through their senior year. We are pushing to get them achieving at higher levels, so graduating on time at higher levels, but also we support them in their transitions to a viable post-secondary option. We've heard references to summer melt, right? And so that second critical phase of making certain that we don't lose kids between the summer that they graduate and enroll in the next academic year. And then obviously, as David and Donna and others on the panel have talked about, getting our young people to, but getting them through a range of supports, both at the institutional level, but also making certain that those supports remain solid within the community. Great question.
So at Montclair, through our EOF program, we're reaching out to our high school feeder schools. We have five high schools throughout the region that most of our students come from in the EOF program, and we're engaging them and bringing them onto our campus much earlier. Before the snowstorm came last week, we were supposed to host 400 young men from our area high schools, helping them to understand the journey towards enrollment. But that event will take place on November the 30th. So those are some of the things that we're doing at Montclair to begin to strengthen the pipeline.
I also volunteer in public schools with pregnant and parenting students because I wish that I would have, at that age, been able to see that it was possible to go to higher education as a young parent. I also always stress to them that just getting into an institution isn't enough. You have to be conscientious about what the institution can offer you, because otherwise, 4 to 8% success rate, you're basically signing up for failure unless you go to an institution. Like I tell people, go to the West Coast. If you don't have family here, pack up your child and go to UC Berkeley. Sorry, New Jersey, we need to get with the program because they have wraparound services, they have on-site childcare, they have things that will actually enable you to succeed. So my thing is always look at the service. It's actually better a lot of times to start out at community college because I went to Raritan Valley. There was a childcare center right there. I could nurse my child. I started to fail once I reached the four-year institution.
So we are trying to make sure that New Jersey has the resources so that people don't feel like they have to go. But that's a very real thing. That's a very real thing, is that we've got to make sure that we have a vision. And California is notorious for having a master plan for higher education that has guided their steps, and we got to get ourselves together. Who's next?
Hilda Romero from Newark.
Yes.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Hilda Romero, as was stated. I'm a student here at Rutgers University, Newark, so I would like to say thank you. This is a rare occurrence that happens. Like, it's obviously not something that happens every year or every semester. But I guess my question basically goes, given the world or society today, if there is one thing that you guys can change to basically promote student leadership and inclusivity, what would it be?
That's a great question.
I have an answer. I think that we really need to change the definition of who a student and scholar is. That idea needs to change. It's too narrow. It informs the policies and practices of our institutions, and it marginalizes a lot of us who don't fit that mythical norm.
It would be very hard for me to, that is so right on. I think it is very critical that we look at kind of a really multifaceted definition of what who a successful student is, resiliency factors, commitment to family and community, working jobs, potentially caring for your own family or raising your own children. It's really important that we create a broader definition of who a successful student is. We very much value that in the programs that I oversee at CUNY. We look for students who bring a variety of success and leadership factors to the table, and then try to create conditions for them to grow those skills while they're in our programs. Opportunities to tutor, opportunities to be peer mentors, and to be leaders in terms of telling other students about the programs and how they can serve them if they join us. So it's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Maisha.
There we go. Umberto from Twitter has asked, is the state strategic plan for higher education linked to the economic development plan for the state?
Yes, it is. Umberto, are you really Tim Sullivan, our chair of the Economic Development Agency? Well, thank you for that question. We are very much keying off of the economic development plan that the governor recently announced. I think it was October. And central to the state's economic development is the success of its students. So we will not be successful as a state. Companies will not want to come here and locate. There will not be jobs, because the jobs of the future are those that require a higher level of skill than in the past, if we don't have people who are prepared to take them on. So what we want to do is our part to make sure that, people are more than workers. It's not just about getting a job, so I want to be clear about that. But definitely our economic development plan, if we don't succeed in what we're doing here, we won't be successful and strong as a state economically. Okay, so those are the questions that I think we have. I saw one more here. Was that a question, or is that? Oh, okay. I can ask more questions, and they didn't get a chance to do some of the things that I think they wanted to talk about, so I'll go back to that. But I just wanted to make sure that we're good on the people from the audience. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, one of the things that we're doing, obviously, is creating a state plan. What does the vision look like? What does it look like to actually have student success? You mentioned the 25% goal. I think it's always important for us to have a goal. We know, and I didn't bring all my slides because I thought it was enough, but we have very different rates of college attainment when you look by county. So, Cumberland County, Essex County look different than, Burlington or Warren County, so we've got to really think about how do we target the places where the need is the greatest. So when you look at what that vision is moving forward, what do you see?
So I'll start. One of the things that we were able to prove, for example, in ASAP, is that we could more than double the graduation rate for students. So when we began in 2007, the 3-year graduation rate for our associate-seeking students was about 15%. And even for fully skills proficient students, it was only about 25%. So our then chancellor, my heart actually stopped, but he told the mayor, we're going to double that. We're going to double that. We're going to hit a 50% graduation rate. And we not only met that, but we exceeded it. So our average graduation rate in ASAP is 53% compared to 25% for similar students. But what we've been able to do is we've grown the program as we're raising the system rate for all students, so much so that the university is now committed to doubling the overall system rate by 2022. Wow. So I think it is important to set a bold goal where you're aiming to, not nibble around the margins, but double graduation rates and other success factors like retention and credit accumulation. So I think setting a bold completion goal that looks at the baseline of where various counties might start is very critical. It's also really important to close opportunity gaps. Yep. So one of the other reasons that ASAP has been so successful at CUNY and that the city and state have invested so heavily in its expansion to 25,000 students this year, as you mentioned, is that the program is successful for all students. So all students basically hit that 50% graduation rate. It might be off by a percentage or two, but if you kind of drew a line across a piece of paper, all subgroups, whether you look at race, ethnicity, students entering with Pell, they're all being affected by the program. So whatever initiatives and strategies that are adopted, it's very critical that they don't just kind of raise all boats, but they're addressing achievement gaps. So I would say that's critical.
I would just add that we're proud of our goal here in terms of 25 by 2025. It's allowed us to create an unprecedented amount of momentum citywide across sectors. Nonprofit, corporate, philanthropic, K-12 systems, obviously higher education institutions. But the great thing about what's happening in Newark is that we're not limiting ourselves to a mere numeric target. We've already moved towards 21% based on the American Community Survey. But the questions that we're now asking here is how are we engaging Newarkers in the poorest, most vulnerable census tracts in our city, not merely inching up based on residents coming in with credentials, right? But how are we getting at those issues around equity and access? The other point I will add is our work to strengthen and improve our K-12 pipelines. We do that work very closely, again, with our partners at Newark Public Schools in particular, but looking at specific opportunities to connect more of our young people to access to rigorous coursework, right? And so if you've got young people who are sequenced and on courses that are largely general ed, that are not going to allow them to graduate on time and ready to do college level work, then we are not doing our job. So getting more of our young people connected to advanced placement, dual enrollment, honors, IB, that is a major part of our work here in Newark as well.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say final comments, so, yeah.
So I think that given the fact that New Jersey public institutions, we have some of the highest tuition rates in the country. I think we're fourth. And sadly, a lot of our state dollars that go to provide access to higher education are disproportionately given to students who are attending private institutions. So I think that it's very important as we're talking about charting the way forward for higher education in New Jersey is that the state legislators get very serious about supporting the students who are going to their public institutions and not those individuals who choose to go to private institutions. And I think the second piece that we have to be very strategic around as we talk about higher education is looking at holistic admissions criteria and not looking solely at a standardized test that we know are disproportionately affecting people of color and minorities. So we need to be creative on how we're selecting and enrolling our students and opening up that access to more students by, maybe getting rid of the ACT and SAT requirement and making it optional for our students.
That's not the biggest.
Which I'm proud to say that Montclair has, 2 years ago, we decided that we were no longer going to solely look at the SAT or ACT, and we have made that optional. And we really haven't seen a decrease in the quality of students that we're receiving.
I can't believe we're having this whole affirmative action debate about Harvard, and the central feature is like students' SAT scores, as if the SAT is a nationally mandated, it's a private organization, okay? I have great friends that work at the College Board, but they are not God, and they're not a government agency, and they are not, actually their president just last week acknowledged that, people that have greater resources are likely to do a better job. So for us to be so focused on that, I'm not making any policy today, but I'm also not in charge of college admissions. But I'm just saying that we have to acknowledge that that is a private organization that has a test that has a limited purpose.
Yeah, going off of that, I mean, I took the SAT 2 years ago, and I absolutely dreaded it. My mom hired a private tutor because she wanted to bring my SAT scores up because Seton Hall offers a public tuition rate if you reach a certain score. And I was 20 points off from reaching that score. But I think that personally, maybe I'm a little bit biased on this, but for me, I think that I've succeeded pretty well at Seton Hall. I'm a cheerleader, I'm part of student government, I volunteer, I'm very active, but my main priority is that I'm a student first, no matter what. And I take my academics seriously. And I don't think that I should be based on the criteria of my SAT scores. My friends who are in the honors program, my SAT scores weren't high enough for me to get into the honors program. But when my friends complain about it, they're like, oh yeah, this student in class today has no intellectual, philosophy because it was just a stupid remark they made in class today, and they look at me and they're like, why aren't you in the honors program? Like, did you choose not to be in it? And I said, no, I didn't get accepted because my SAT scores weren't high enough. And even, I'm not a good test taker, and I've admitted that, and I think that's why one of the reasons that I've held myself back from going into the medical profession is that I have to take a lot of exams and a lot of tests in order to succeed. And yes, I know that there's always going to be something that, there has to be at least some sort of way to test your proficiency in any type of skill. It makes perfect sense, but SATs, I don't know the quadratic, I mean I do, but there are certain things on the SATs that, require...
You know the things that matter.
Yeah. And
you know the things that matter.
Those things on the SATs did not matter whatsoever, and I don't think that the SATs were a measurement of how intellectual I am and how my thought process works. And so, some of the schools that I applied to didn't require the SAT requirement, but my high school guidance counselor said, send in your SAT scores anyway, it's not going to hurt you. But in the end, I think it did hurt me. And I think that's something that, we should be reflecting on as we accept students into higher education institutions.
Yeah, we all know that the SAT, like she said, you can hire a private tutor. Most of the time it reflects your economic level, socioeconomic level, rather than your achievement or ability. Also, I never took that exam, and I just graduated with highest honors from Rutgers University.
Yes.
Just saying, it's not really important in the greater scheme of things. You can definitely make it happen. And I'm about to take my GREs next week, dreading it, but going to do it, and also to rely on a large body of other things that I've done aside from a score. But I wanted to just wrap up by saying and urging all of you to that we really need to put equity at the center of tackling any of these solutions. It's always about also not only how do we solve the problem, but how can the solution be part of equity? Like, please engage with people who are on the ground in the community already doing this work. Pay them for their time. A lot of times I'm at things and I'm like, am I the only one in here not getting a paycheck? I think so. And it's hard. I'm not saying this. You're reimbursing for travel.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't think we can't pay people more than their travel, but we appreciate it.
But I'm saying, as far as, engaging with the community and bringing them on and making them a part of the solution. And we know that lived experience is so critical and important for the shaping of policies that truly take into account and can impact communities.
Thank you all. I feel like we had such a great conversation today. I'm going to tell you 3 top things that I heard today, and then I want everybody, if you didn't already do the wish wall, if you have not heard about our survey, please take that, and if you want to go to our website, nj.gov/highereducation, there's a link to give us feedback. I heard that we need to help students and support students through the entry point by having connections through K-12 and earlier. I heard that we need to think about students holistically and not just as a test score, and think about how we get them in and bring them in and make sure that our image of who students are is more inclusive. I heard that we need to consider equity in all we do, and we saw some of those opportunities for improvement as a state, and so focusing in on the populations that need it most. And then I heard meeting students where they are, and so making sure that we remove the barriers that aren't really about learning. So the transportation, the registration, the fact that you got to, sometimes people have this image that by going through the ridiculous paperwork, that is helping you in life. The paperwork is not helping you in life. The learning is helping you in life. The paperwork is an unnecessary barrier. So we need to remove the unnecessary barriers as much as possible. So we're going to take that and put it into our plan. And like I said, if you have other feedback, you know how to reach us. I thank you for your time and hanging out with us today, and we're looking forward to what comes next.